The other day I was talking to a new friend who does prison ministry for men. He told me in this conversation, "I'm not qualified to do this." I stopped him right there and I asked, "What do you mean you're not qualified?" He stated, "Well, I'm not a pastor and I'm certainly not a psychologist." Now let's stop and think about this for a minute. What kind of qualifications does someone need to help another person in a bad spot? So he's speaking to men, right? Is he a man? Of course he is. Does he feel called to this ministry? Of course he does. Otherwise he wouldn't be doing it. Is he willing to carry God's love to other men in a bad place? I would also say that the answer is yes on that one. You don't know him, but I can tell you that he is filled with God's love and willing to give that to others. What else would he possibly need to qualify him? To be honest, I hear this sentiment all the time. People telling me they aren't qualified. And this thought just, it keeps them from really diving in and stops them from even trying or following their calling. Leaders, let's not allow a piece of paper on the wall or a title to define our actions. It's absolutely absurd. Now look at me. I've done some amazing things in this world. And I'm not saying that to be boisterous or anything else. But I follow a mission. And I don't even possess a bachelor's degree. Let's break that down for a second. I've led groups of engineers in the workplace. I've been on the front lines of leading strategic initiatives with a very large company. I've led tons of people, both inside and outside of work, and many other things. All of this without a damn piece of paper on the wall or a specific title to get me there. If I was actually waiting to be qualified for anything that I've done, I certainly wouldn't be a husband. I don't know where you get that cert at. I wouldn't be a parent. I wouldn't be where I am with my career today. I wouldn't be doing this podcast. I wouldn't go out and do any sort of public speaking. I wouldn't be speaking at a concert here coming up in April, or anything else that I've done in my life. All right, before we get started with this episode, let me introduce myself. My name's Steve Baumgartner, and my mission on this podcast and here today with this episode is to serve you through providing knowledge, resources, and tools around leadership on three primary battlefronts. Those battlefronts are simply in the workplace, out in your community, and most importantly, with your family. Now let's get to work.
Leaders are not born in a womb. They are forged through heat, pressure, and a whole lot of sweat. The Fire Forged Leader podcast serves the audience through exploring leadership at work, in the community, and with the family, using a practical perspective and real-life experiences from the host, Steve Baumgartner, and his guests in The Forge. Now, it's time to enter the Forge with the Fire Forged Leader.
Before we really get into the content, let me tell you a couple ways that you can help out this show. First, make sure to give this show a rating. Rating is what helps us get to those chart tops. When we get up there, we reach more people. And while you're there, write a review to let other people know what you like about the show and why you listen. Last but certainly not least, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss out on a single episode. All right, let's get into it. This example that I gave is something that's actually quite common. This man that I'm talking about here he's not an exception to the rule. It is the rule. We have people out here who are in the same boat that he is, and many people are. They've come to believe in their minds that everything that we do in life needs a set of qualifications. And then they measure themselves up against those qualifications that they have in their head. I hear it all the time. Things like, I'm not qualified to take that promotion. I don't have the qualifications to teach my children. That takes more qualifications than what I have to offer. Guys, this is bullshit. Straight up bullshit. Now, what is the measuring stick that we're using? A lot of times I believe that we measure ourselves against the job description, right? It says it needs a degree. Or other times, it's a title or a position that defines the measuring stick. Such as people don't believe that they're a leader because they don't have a title. Now let's break these things down for a minute. Let's talk about the education piece, the degree piece, the diploma piece, right? The paper that hangs up on the wall piece. And you guys have heard me talk about education before. But I'm just going to say it bluntly. Academia is there for academia's sake. It doesn't help the world much. It makes a lot of money. It certainly makes a lot of money. And I get what happened there, right? A couple generations ago, we had people who worked really, really hard, right? They didn't want their kids to work that hard, so they want them to get educated, right? So we started pumping people's brains full of, you need to get a degree, you need to get a degree, you need to go to a 4-year college, blah, 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 blah. The colleges saw that. They saw that. And they looked at how much money they could make. So they made it a perpetual cycle. All right. So anyways, let's talk about some of the people who I know who have large, expensive degrees. All right. 4-year degrees, 6-year degrees, whatever, right? Bachelor's, master's, all that sort of thing. I've led these type of people in the work environment, right? I've led these people out in the community. I don't have that. But many of these people that I've talked to, right? And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have got it, by all means. I want to make sure that that's explicitly clear. But many of these people who I've talked to that have these large, expensive degrees actually tell me that they're glad that they got the degree. And sorry, I chuckle here a little bit, because it helped them get their foot in the door. But they have never used the knowledge that they gained from the degree. What? Really? So, what you're telling me is there's a paper up on the wall, right? That helped them get their foot in the door. Did you hear what I just said? Most of these people say they are glad to have it, but don't use it. And that's where they spent 4 years of their lives, folks. 6 years of their lives, 8 years of their lives. So what you're telling me And I'm going to break this down into some numbers. You guys know that I like to do this, right? Let's say that one of my kids I live in Kansas City, Missouri, right? Just south. Let's say one of my kids wanted to go to Mizzou, the University of Missouri, right? And I took a look at state tuition on their website. And they have a range there for, tuition. So I took the dead nuts midpoint, right? And the midpoint would be $15,922 a year for tuition and fees. All right. So then we look up the housing and dining costs on average, and that's $13,550 per year. Now, those of you like me who don't have a degree must be bad at math, so I'm going to break that down to you. That comes up to $29,472 per year. A bachelor's degree generally takes 4 years, sometimes 5 or 6, because these kids seem to think that money grows on trees, right? But let's say that my child got through this college in 4 years. That cost would rack up to just shy of $118,000. Let me say that again, $118,000. So let's put this into perspective. These people are telling me that an investment of $118,000 has a good return on investment because they get their foot in the door of a place that is probably going to start them off with less than that for their first year of employment. Let's settle for a minute. The ROI is to get a piece of paper on the wall that gets them an entry-level job that will pay them less per year than that piece of paper cost them. Yeah, that makes sense. Did you just hear my eyes roll? Because they did, and hard, let me tell you. So let me say it again. They're not using the degree, but it's a qualifier for their abilities. Come on, guys. Come on. Do you hear how stupid that sounds? Now, don't get me wrong. I am very happy that when my appendix burst, that the doctor knew what an appendix was and where it's located in the human body, right? I also think that defense lawyers should know the laws when defending clients. I think that people who split atoms should have a high education, right? But why does it need to be a qualifier for everything? The simple fact is it doesn't. It is a money-making opportunity. Educated idiots are out there putting qualifications for degrees into job descriptions and cutting their own throats on finding good, actual qualified candidates. Now, I had a person in HR one time tell me, the reason why we require degrees is to know that the person can start and finish something. Again, come on. What the hell are you talking about? If it's an internal candidate, give this person a project to work on. And you're going to see that exact thing that you're looking for. And you can save the person some damn money. Come on. We want degrees because we want to see if people can start and finish something. Look at their job history. Give them a project to work on. There's other ways than going to college. If that's the only reason to go to college, if that's the only reason, why are we doing it? All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox on this whole college scam. Let's talk about the other reason, which is the title or position. So the man in my original story said, I'm not a pastor. How many times in our lives have we said something like, I can't be the supervisor. I don't have the experience or the title. Or at home, I can't teach my kids. I'm not a teacher. Or any sort of variant of these type of comments. We're saying the same things, right? I'm not a pastor, so I can't minister to people. I'm not a teacher, so I can't teach my kids. We teach them daily. I'm not a supervisor, so I can't lead. It's all a bunch of bogus, right? I'm sure it's more than you ever imagined how many times you talk to yourself like that. And all of this really, when it comes down to it, it's a form of imposter syndrome. We hear this term all the time, but really what the term means is that you don't believe in yourself or your own competency. Let's get real for a minute. There are very few things that we can't learn, especially in today's age, simply by researching the topics. I find it funny as hell. I often get asked when I tell people that we homeschool. I get asked, how are we qualified to homeschool our children? My first response that comes out of my mouth is what makes me unqualified to homeschool my children? People seem to think since I don't have a teaching degree that I shouldn't be doing it. So, here's a part that really gets me about education. I am highly successful. And success means different things to different people. But I have a very strong marriage. I have a great family. I have a fantastic career. I do a ton out in the community. I have good friends. The list goes on and on and on. I am very successful. I can't say the same things about a lot of the people in education that I've met. So, if children are going to be taught, shouldn't they be taught by someone who is a good husband, tries his damnedest to be a good father, who makes goals and accomplishes them, who is active in the community, who's a good person, who leads well? The list goes on and on and on again. The thought is simply wrong. It's wrong in a ton of different ways. I'm my child's best teacher. And if it's not even one of the other reasons that I told you, it's because I love them in a way that nobody else can. I want the best for them and their futures. Don't get me wrong. I believe that most teachers care. But I don't necessarily believe that they're the best teachers for my children. And I certainly don't believe that they're supported past the median achievement of the group. High achievers suffer, low achievers suffer. They shoot for average. I don't want my kids to be average. They're also overloaded, and they don't get enough time with each child. They don't spend one-on-one time with these children. They spend one on 30, one on 20, one on 40, whatever the classroom dynamic is. And their time gets taken up by problems. I am fully qualified to teach my children. Oh, and by the way, when people want to argue that fact, that's when I tell them just to end the conversation, because I really don't care what they think. I tell them that my wife has 2 education degrees and is a dyslexia specialist. And she even states that college doesn't prepare for teaching. And she's deconstructing the things that she learned in college so that she can teach our children correctly. I saw a meme the other day, and it said something to the effect of, I'm sure glad that I learned how to calculate the angles of a parallelogram instead of how to do my taxes. And I'm going to tell you, folks, I damn near fell out of my seat laughing. It was hilarious. And it's funny because it's true, right? So let me tell you about how we teach math in my house. It's certainly not talking about if 2 trains are heading towards each other at different speeds, when are they going to collide? When are they ever going to need to know that? All right? We talk about real things like counting money, like savings, sales on a business. If you don't know already, my children have a craft business that we started because we wanted to teach them math in an applicable way. They're going to need that. They're going to need that if they enter the workforce, if they start their own business, and we're going to keep on expanding on that. They also get to learn some different things. Geometry, some algebra, different things. They're not quite ready for a lot of these topics, so I fill in those gaps. But they learn applicable skills. So here's another way in my personal life that I think that qualifications are a farce. If you guys don't know, I'm deeply involved with an international men's organization called Order of Man. And what we do is, especially in the fraternity of the Iron Council, which is the inner workings of it, we really help men become better men in the simple scheme of things. And we focus on 4 different things that come together and brings a man into balance. We focus on the man's mental state, his connections with other people, his wife, his family, the community, whatever, his physical well-being, and ultimately his contribution to society. So what we do in this very large group, right, is we break up into smaller groups called battle teams, and we have deep processes to help the men along their journey of growth. Are any of us qualified to work in these spaces? And I'm asking to look at it through society's lenses, right? In every one of these battle teams, do we have doctors, therapists, personal trainers, business coaches, whatever. And some of them, we might have one or two of these things, but generally not. There's over 1,000 people in this group, right? And we break up into 15 men teams. And we don't have qualified people in every team by society's standards. But we are qualified. We are men willing to speak truth to other men, to share things with other men that we generally wouldn't share, to challenge, hold each other accountable, and to come together in brotherhood. And let me tell you this fact about it. There are a ton more people growing in their lives that are, well, let me put it this way. If you're going to put side by side the things that we do in this group compared to psychologists or whoever, we have a damn higher success rate. And in shorter amounts of time. When people start therapy, they're there forever, right? And I'm not saying that therapy's not needed, but it's not the cure-all, and the qualifications aren't the cure-all. There's different ways to be qualified than a paper up on the wall, sitting on a couch telling someone your dreams. We have to get rid of this theory of being unqualified, this imposter syndrome. And here's simply what I would suggest. Number one, we got to reframe our thoughts. I had an episode on this, reframing your thoughts, where I talked about cognitive-based therapy, right? And in this suggestion, what I'm talking about is when you come to this point where you think you're unqualified for something, let's take a look at it. What does it really look like to be qualified? And then once that you look at that, right? I'm not a therapist. Okay. Do I really need to be? Does this mindset actually matter? I want you to ask yourself that question. Secondly, let's allow others to speak into us, right? When someone says that you would be good at something, that you should try this job, that you should try this activity or whatever, actually consider it. Because a lot of times my wife can see a lot more positives about me than I can. They generally see something in us that we don't see. Next thing I want you to do is understand your own skill sets. All right? Skills are transferable. Let me say that again. Skills are transferable. I see it all the time on resumes that people turn in and how they word things. They supervise rather than lead. They make widgets rather than whatever, right? So stop thinking of your skills as, I supervise people making widgets. Rather, think about it as, I lead people to successfully complete goals daily and long term, right? Because that's really what you're doing. And then if you see gaps, I want you to work on closing them, right? We all learn differently. It doesn't come from a 4-year education. Sometimes it's experience. Sometimes it's mentorship. We all learn differently. Figure out your way and close those gaps. Now for me, I watch a ton of YouTube videos to figure things out. I gain a lot of knowledge from YouTube videos. You can go to the library, different things like that. So one thing that I am exceptionally good at is using Excel. Formulas, tables, pivot charts, using it to tell stories, right? And I have people ask me all the time, well, what's the best class that I should take for Excel? And I tell them, don't take a class. Absolutely don't take a class, because they're going to teach you everything about Excel and you're going to forget most of it. Find a problem that needs solved, research the answer, and apply it. And you're going to be amazed on how much more qualified you're going to be than other people at Excel. And I would say that that's true for most things. Find a problem that needs a solution, research a solution, and put the problem to bed. When you apply the knowledge is when you gain it. I would bet that better than 80% of the time, you are more qualified to do something than the people you are judging as qualified. You just don't give yourself the proper credit. So let's go through that again. I want you to reframe your thoughts. I want you to allow other people to speak into you. I want you to understand your own skill sets. And then finally, if you see gaps, I want you to work on closing them. All right, let's wrap it up there. Leaders, you have come here to listen to this message once again. But listening is not enough. What are you going to apply today, this week, or this month? Remember, when you become a better leader, you become a better spouse, you become a better parent, a better coworker, and ultimately, that person that others choose to follow.
You have just experienced the heat and pressure of the forge. Remember, words without action are meaningless. Now, after the heat of the forge, shape your thoughts, quench your brain, then put your new tools to use, adding to your leadership. Tune in next week for more lessons from the forge.